All right, welcome again to launch day here at Invite Press. I'm so excited about the release of our latest book, Early Warning: How to Lead with Wisdom in Times of Technological Disruption. David, congratulations on your new book.
I'm so excited to finally see it come to pass.
Here it is. I got it in the flesh right here.
Awesome.
Hot off the presses. This has been a long time coming. I know this has been a labor of love for you. Kind of talk a little bit about the history and the origins of the book.
Well, it's been about 10 years in the making, and started out as a class when I was teaching technology for ministry at Tabor College. And I realized pastors were not really equipped to handle the multimedia technology that was coming down the pike. And my role in instructional design in universities working with classroom technology has kept me on the forefront of what emerging technologies are coming down the pike. And I realized we were never taught about this in Bible college or seminary. Churches aren't ready for the technology that's coming, all the technology disruption. And so that's really why I wrote the book, was to address that need.
If you have an elevator speech about the book, so someone asks you, I know this has been happening a lot. You've been getting the book out there, talking about it on social. So when someone says, well, what's the book about? I mean, how do you summarize that in a very short way?
Well, in a nutshell, I play the role of a storm chaser who goes out there ahead of time to figure out what's coming, to analyze it, study it, research it, and then I describe, those technologies that are coming. I explain how we got where we are, what they can do in the life and ministry of a local church. I look at some biblical and theological implications, and then I look at church history to see what lessons we can learn for how to apply that technology today. And then I look at some plausible scenarios of how we could apply it in our ministry context.
Wow, that's great. That's a lot, and it's reflected in the thickness of the book. You've got a lot in here. Congratulations! I know this has been a labor of love for you, and of course, as a fellow technology buff like you, it's a lot of fun for me to see this in print. Hey, kind of walk through for our listeners here some of the chapters. You've got several chapters, five kind of core topics,
Sure.
if you will. So, kind of what do you have? How is this framed up?
Well, I rounded these all up into 5 core areas. And so first was the big technology disruption that we all faced, the COVID-19 pandemic, and what that meant for live streaming and the move to online platforms. Then we're all dealing with generative AI right now. I was on the cutting edge of that 2 weeks after ChatGPT came out. I've been studying and researching it long before then. So I look at how we can use generative AI in the church today and what risks and pitfalls there are to avoid. Then the third chapter, I look at Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and DAOs, and all the implications that those have and what could be coming and how we can utilize it. And then one of my favorite chapters is chapter 4, which is all about virtual presence. I look at the metaverse and virtual reality and explore pastors and churches who are actually doing church in the metaverse and talk about what that could look like in your own local context. And then I wrap things up with what may seem a bit futuristic, but it's coming a whole lot faster than we think. And that is driverless cars, delivery drones, autonomous vehicles, even on-demand transport and delivery services.
I went by, got my tires fixed at Walmart a couple weeks ago, and I went by and they had dedicated about 25% of the entire parking lot to a massive drone operation. And I was so fascinated. I just walked over there and stared and watched these massive drones lift up, take
Yep.
their cargo and go off in the distance. And I was like, man, I'm living in the future. This is amazing.
And that's what I love about it. I'm a huge fan of sci-fi. So anytime I see sci-fi come into reality, I get pretty excited. But I don't think most of us really understand just how rapidly things are coming. So what we've already been seeing with Waymo and what Amazon does with their delivery drones, this is coming a whole lot quicker than we think. And so my passion is to help pastors and ministry leaders be ready for it. So we're not caught off guard, but we're prepared.
I see your Ray Kurzweil singularity on the shelf there. You've been studying this for a long time, I'm sure. So talk about, okay, so among these 5 large buckets in the book, each one of those is kind of its own self-contained thing. But as an expert in all these areas, I'm sure your mental kind of rabbit trails, if you will, kind of bouncing around between all these different things. And what's something that's been top of mind for you here just right now? Just this week or lately, like what have been kind of the latest thing for you in this?
Well, by far, the impact of generative AI has been the biggest impact, both in higher education, but also in ministry contexts. I have so many friends who are struggling with how that's used in the classroom as also what's appropriate for use in the church.
Mm.
And navigating that's a challenge. I know Jason Moore wrote an awesome book that came out last fall on AI in the church, and I got to have a hand in helping see that come to life. And so I'm really excited now that I can at least have a chapter on this and then take those same ideas and run even further with it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. In fact, we had to change our publishing contract to add a clause to say this is actually yours, right? So, yeah, because that's no longer a given anymore, for sure. So what's something you've this book is, we're about 7 months, so as you know, from manuscript to street, more or less, give or take. I mean, this field's moving so fast. So what's something that you've learned or that you might even change, from the book from the time you wrote it until now?
Well, the pace of innovation is what's blowing my mind. Stuff that I thought was going to take longer is actually coming quicker.
Mm,
And I mentioned a couple times in there Diamandis and Kotler's book, "The Future is Faster Than We Think." Um, and what blew my mind with that book was just at the end of every chapter, listen to audiobooks, so much had changed from the time when they did the print version to when they did the audio just 9 months later, that they had several minutes worth of commentary of updates on what's new. And so I'm seeing the same thing with this. I focused on bigger issues and larger principles, so that it would stand the test of time. And I explain more about concepts than specific technology platforms because I know that's all going to change.
right.
But so much is changing so fast, and especially on the driverless vehicles. For example, my son and I were in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago, and we saw Waymo charting out routes there. They're putting on 20,000 training miles a day to train
Wow.
these vehicles, and they've already done it in Austin, San Francisco, Phoenix. So it we're not far away from seeing a very driverless future.
So somewhere between this one pole you might call the Chicken Little pole, kind of the Luddite, the world is ending, kind of. Then the other extreme of like this technological utopia that we're all moving to. The in betweens are most people live, right? So when you talk to folks about this, and they're like, yes, some nice things, but there's a lot of things I'm really concerned about. What's something that you tell them to give them a little bit of peace and a little bit of
Yeah.
hope for where we are right now?
Well, hopefully, I've struck a really good balance between both extremes. And what I like to tell pastors is you don't need to know every technology and be using it in your church, but you need to be aware of what's out there and why it matters, why people are using it, and how it's going to impact you. Because when people come to you for counsel and advice, or let's just say your youth minister is leading the kids into the metaverse and parents react very strongly to that, or one of your staff ministers is using AI or publishes something in the newsletter, it's very obviously written by AI. Are you ready for that? Do you have a ethical standards policy about how you're going to approach that kind of stuff? So being ready, I think, is the key thing. And that's really where my book goes with that, is helping pastors lead with wisdom so they can know what's coming and be ready to do well.
I love that angle. It's not even necessarily you're trying to say do this, don't do that. You're just trying to equip people to make wise choices. Because as you say, the technology changes so fast. There's no way you can address every use case that might be out there.
Yeah. And a lot of my background is educational technology research. So I've studied and researched a lot of this, but I am definitely a user. I have attended church in the metaverse. I've used VR regularly. I've used generative AI frequently, dozens of times a day. I do have some cryptocurrency and you invest in Bitcoin. So everything I'm talking about is something I've actually been using, researching, studying, planning, getting to know, and playing around with. And I feel a lot more confident than helping pastors and ministry leaders know how to lead with wisdom when I've been there myself.
Yeah, for sure. Let's look at a couple of endorsements, some things that people are saying. You got a lot of really great endorsements, David. So our mutual friend, Leonard Sweet. This book is not about running from disruption, but running toward it with faith, courage, and hope. Swisher shows that the storms of AI, blockchain, the metaverse, and autonomous tech are not threats to be feared, but thresholds to be crossed, opportunities to reimagine ministry for a new generation. Great word from Len that I think captures the book well. Mike Jones, I met your friend Mike. We did a podcast once together. If you're feeling uncertain about technology in the church, this book is your guide. Prepare to be inspired and equipped.
Yep.
I love that. I also love the quote. I don't think we had this one on the screen, but your friend Henry Knight, just so simple, but so he says that enormously helpful. Can't recommend it enough. There's no better advice or recommendation for a book than what he has to say. Any kind of early returns or comments from anybody that maybe has read a little bit or kind of seen a snippet of it? I know we're really early in the life of the book. I'm curious if you got any feedback about it.
Well, I did share chapters with a couple of people ahead of time to get their feedback before I finally went to print, and everybody was very positive about what they were seeing and saying this needs to get out there.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good sign.
That's good. That's good. I always like to talk about the difference between Amazon and inviteministries.org. So let me do that for a second. Amazon is where if you've got an individual buyer, so if you're listening, watching today, you want to support David and you want a single copy, we actually recommend you do that on Amazon, because the higher those rankings go, the more the algorithm is favorable to it. And a lot of people actually will buy off the top 10 list or the top 20 list. We saw this with Jason's books. You mentioned Jason a minute ago. We were able to hit high rankings early, and those books stayed there a bit. And in fact, the other day, I bought some books with rhetoric just by going to the top 10 list on Amazon. So I know people do this. But if you want bulk quantities of the book, say, for example, you intend to teach this in a class of some sort, that's where inviteministries.org is really helpful, because if you buy 10, 20 copies at a time or more, we have some automatic discounts that kick in there that you can't get anywhere else, because one of our goals as a publisher is to really encourage people to study these works in group settings, and I think yours is no different in the sense that it's a good opportunity for people to do that because of its faith basis in what you've written.
I think it has strong potential for group study, and also I can see district superintendents and any kind of ministry organizations buying it for all their pastors or all their boards or leaders. Bulk purchases would be a great deal there.
So talk about hopes and dreams, David. Now that this book is out in the world and you're looking back on it in a few years, what would be you say, wow, this worked from the standpoint of just the ministry, the goals that you have had as a writer for it?
Well, what I have been writing about, I've had bottled up for about 10 years, and I've shared it with very limited audiences here and there, specific churches, specific classes. I opening up a whole new platform. I would love to come to different churches and district gatherings and actually present some of the, do workshops about the content and the concepts that are in the book. And I just want to see more pastors and ministry leaders prepared for what's coming so that we're not broadsided. It is a very challenging world that a lot of pastors and ministry leaders are in today. And so much is changing so fast that we just don't feel ready. And so for somebody who's been there before to walk pastors through what it involves and what it means and what that's going to impact, I think it's going to be transformative for people. In the video I put together earlier about why I wrote the book, I said that early warnings are a game changer. And that's really what I want to see out of this, is by giving pastors and ministry leaders an early warning about what's coming. I hope to see a whole lot more prepared and ready, so that when stuff comes down the pike, they're like, oh, we can handle this. We're so ready.
Well, because of that reason, I actually think this book's got a long shelf life ahead of it, maybe longer than some other books do. In terms of, I agree with you. I think the level of technological change is not slowing down. It's accelerating. And what we're going to see the next several years with AGI and the other things that are happening are going to be disruptive in a way that perhaps we have not yet seen. So in times of massive change, as the book says, people need a guide to go to. And I hope that early warning becomes that guide for people. So good job writing it. Congratulations, David. It's fun to hold this in my hand. I know you don't have it yet, but we're going to get it to you, and we'll start getting this out into the world and see what happens with it.
Excellent.
All right. Launch day. Invite Press. Early warning. How to lead with wisdom in times of technological disruption. Thanks, David.